Hello, everybody. Welcome to Twins Daily, Offseason Live. My name is Nick Nelson of twinsdaily.com, as you can see here on the screen. And tonight, I am very excited for tonight's episode. I'm probably the most excited for this episode as I've been of any of our, 9 episodes so far of Offseason Live, because we are going to be talking about trade targets. With our crew of panelists here, we're going to be submitting our trade ideas for the Minnesota Twins this offseason. And it's going to be a lot of fun. We definitely welcome everyone to come in and submit their own ideas and pick ours apart and all that. So let's bring in our panelists. Tonight I am joined by Tom Froming and Nash Walker of twinsdaily.com. Tom, how are you doing tonight?
Doing awesome. Talking baseball, November. It doesn't get any better than that.
It really doesn't. And we're going to have to keep ourselves busy with some speculation and chatter here because it's probably going to be a slow offseason. But the trade avenue should be a popular one, I think. Nash, how are you?
I'm doing good, Nick. Thank you. I think I agree with you. The moves that we might see from the Twins, I think it's more likely that we see a big trade than it is that we see a big free agent signing this offseason, in my opinion. So I've been diving in on trade stuff, and I think it's perfect that we're doing it tonight.
Yeah, if you want to see what a big trade looks like involving the Twins, an impactful, franchise-altering trade, look no further than 9 months ago, 9 months ago. They traded Brewster Gratterall for Kenta Maeda with the Dodgers. And that's a great example of a blockbuster trade that I think worked out beautifully for both teams. Kenta Maeda was, of course, the Twins' ace this year, no doubt about it. Just finished runner-up in the Cy Young voting for the AL behind Shane Bieber. And I think the Dodgers are pretty happy with Brewster Gratterall. He helped them get their World Series, and he looks like he might be a successor to Kenley Jansen, and that's that late-inning flamethrower for the Dodgers. So we're going to size up we're going to look at some pretty big blockbuster-type deals here that we see as possibilities just to get some ideas churning in people's heads. So like I mentioned, it's Offseason Live. If you're tuned in through Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Periscope, please feel free to share your thoughts, rip apart these proposals we're going to throw out here. Tell us how ridiculous they are. We're giving up too much. We're giving up too little. Why would we trade for that guy? And of course, feel free to submit your own ideas. If you guys throw out the names of guys on the trade market that you want to see the Twins go after, we're happy to bring them up and talk about them. So we'll let you steer the conversation a little bit. Now, you might be asking yourselves, understandably, what do these three guys know about anything? How are they credible to be coming up with these trade proposals? And do they like cats? Patrick asks. I do. If my cat's around here somewhere. She's wonderful, little Marley.
2 cats.
All right. Nash, you a cat fan?
Yeah, I like cats. I don't mind them. I'm allergic, though, so I never had that connection when I was younger.
Oh, understandable. Okay.
Yeah.
Who are these guys? I just want to give you a little introduction to your armchair GMs for tonight. So let's do that. My name, again, is Nick Nelson of twinsdaily.com. Here you can see a photo of me on the screen looking especially clueless. My top qualification for the gig, I'm proficient with Google Slides. I put these slides together, so I feel like that shows some base level of competence. I can put all the things in the places, and I'm running this episode so far without any disastrous outcomes. But on a real note, I've been writing about the Twins at Twins Daily and my own blog before that for about 15 years. And I like to consider myself a level-headed analyst who looks at both sides. So I'm going to try to come up with some realistic things that I think make sense for both sides, and especially the Twins. Joining us, it's Tom Froming, of course, our number 2 guest here. His top qualification, I put seasoned father, a father of two young children, right, Tom?
Yeah, I'm not sure if 4 years as a father qualifies as seasoned, but I'm gonna, if you put the tag on there, I'm gonna take it.
Man, you're getting through the hardest.
I'm putting that on my resume now.
You're getting through the hardest part. I believe, I feel like that is patience and ability to a compromise that can't be bought in that experience.
Well, we'll find out. Having teenagers sounds pretty terrifying, so I don't know.
Your big challenges lie ahead. And then Nash Walker, of course. His top qualification, the guy won Offseason Jeopardy, the first episode of Offseason Live. So clearly he knows his twin stuff and his details and trivia. So on a real note with these guys, Tom has been Twins Daily's head editor for a long time. does tons of video content. I like to think I enjoy Tom because, I don't know, hopefully this doesn't sound self-congratulatory, but he strikes me as a writer like myself, level-headed, rational, a fan with passion, but a guy who's not going to come out of here with any crazy ideas. And Nash has been
bringing crazy today, though, man. I'm bringing
crazy, but
crazy today.
Reasonable names.
You can't turn people away with this stuff. Listen, people, I got some crazy trades coming.
Twins Daily comments. I assume this is John or Seth or whoever. I don't know. They're commenting from the Twins Daily handle. I say, and I just assume Fromming will share ridiculous trade proposals. You can, yes, you can.
You want to check these out?
Yes, absolutely. And Nash runs the Locked On Twins podcast. Has been writing for Twins Daily for a long time. A great baseball mind as well to bring into this conversation.
Thanks.
So, without further ado, we're going to go through. We've each come up with a couple trade ideas that we see as addressing needs for the Twins and making sense in sort of the scope of this offseason. Nash mentioned the likelihood of a trade maybe outweighing a free agent signing. And this is an offseason where I think trades are going to be, like I mentioned, a very popular way to build your team. There's a lot of financial uncertainty. There will be certain teams looking to unload salary. There may be some teams with a relative willingness to pick up salary. And we're going to look at some trades that work both those ways. So we're going to start out with my first trade proposal of the evening. And in this scenario, the Twins make a trade with the Cincinnati Reds. They receive relief pitcher and closer Raisel Iglesias, who has 1 year remaining on his contract. And they're going to give up outfielder Brent Rooker, we'll say, in this scenario. You could maybe interchange a different player if you want, but my thinking here, and I think this will be reflective of some other deals we talk about, the Reds are a team that is kind of a contender, not a bona fide World Series contender, especially when they lose Trevor Bauer this offseason, undoubtedly. They owe $9 million, a little over $9 million to Raisel Iglesias here in the upcoming 2021 season. I think they're going to be trying to unload that salary, not only because they're on that fringe of contention where do you really need a closer to be one of your top expenses, but also because they acquired Archie Bradley during last season, and he himself is owed, I don't know, 6 or 7 million, which, you know, we've had discussions about is Taylor Rogers worth that. So I have a hard time imagining the Reds are going to want to pay two relievers that much money. So Raisel Iglesias is a name that has come up in the past as a potential target for the Twins and a trade candidate. I think this is the year he gets moved. Brent Rooker, in this case, he's a mid-tier prospect, and I think he's the kind of guy that can get it done because, as we discussed, a lot of teams trying to trim down salary. Not many teams that are going to be looking to take on a $9 million contract for a relief pitcher, but I think the Twins might be in that bucket while only giving up, Brent Rooker's a good player, but to get a player like Iglesias, I see as a good deal. So let's talk a little bit about Iglesias as a target. As I mentioned, owed $9.125 million in 2021. He has a 3.15 career ERA, 10.5 strikeouts per 9, turns 31 in January. I think this is an interesting fact in terms of Fangraphs wins above replacement since 2016. So over the last 5 years, he has 5.9 wins above replacement, which is more than Taylor Rogers at 5.6, more than Tyler Duffy at 3.6, more than Trevor May at 2.2. And those guys have all been around in some capacity since then. So Iglesias is better than any reliever who's been with the team by that metric. He's in the prime of his career. I've always liked Raisel Iglesias because he's a phenomenal pitcher. You can see here with the StatCast numbers we've got pulled up on the screen. He's bright red in every category, great velocity, spin, strikeouts, hard hit rate, exit velocity. Everything is just top notch. A lot of money to pay for a closer, but I think this is a great opportunity to maybe, get a guy at a reasonable trade cost and fill that late inning hole that I think the Twins really want to address. So what we're going to do now, open it up to the other panelists to weigh in on this idea. And I see a lot of comments lighting up here, so we'll pull some of those in as well. One other thing I want to mention with regards to this specific, the Rooker for Iglesias deal, is that the Cincinnati Reds, who would be acquiring Rooker, of course, 6 years of team control, very cheap at the beginning. They got only 5 home runs out of the left field position in 60 games last year and slugged .358 at that position. So they would be definitely filling a need. And I think Brent Rooker is just a player that any team would like to add. So with that said, Tom, what do you think of my idea?
I would probably do that in a heartbeat because Raisel Iglesias is one of the top 5 relief pitchers in baseball. This is a kind of a rare bird, especially these days. Iglesias actually has 3 pitches as a 1-inning bullpen guy, 3 pitches that he throws at least 20% of the time. You just don't see that many guys these days that have a 3-pitch arsenal in the back end of bullpens. With that being the case, with him being one of the top relief, like he's like on the Liam Hendricks level of relief pitcher. I think that the Reds probably would be aiming a little bit higher than a guy like Brent Rooker. No disrespect to Brent Rooker, but he is 26. There's maybe a little less upside than maybe some of the other kind of big bat corner outfield type guys that they'd be eyeing potentially with this kind of a piece. Now, yeah, Iglesias is only 1 year of contract, so that'll hurt his value a bit, but I think I do agree with you that I think that it does make a lot of sense that the Reds might shop him, but man, there is going to be a lot of interest if he gets shopped out there.
Okay. See, I thought that the price tag might be, I mean, we saw Brad Hand get his option declined for 1 year, $10 million. Now, granted, I mean, I don't know. They're probably about similar quality of pitchers. Brad Hand might be a little better. And
I mean, if you go by like projectability, Brad Hand is kind of losing velocity, even though he's been really effective. Iglesias is like you can just see it right up. You have the baseball savant kind of snapshot. He is nasty, and again, he's a 3-pitch pitcher, so he's not really susceptible versus either side. But it's the bullpen market is just like it's the hardest thing to predict.
Yeah. Pulling in a few comments, Josiah says, "I'm just here to enjoy y'all talking Twins." Hey, we appreciate having you here, Josiah, and everybody. Rain Man says JK for Mike Trout. Maybe we'll discuss that possibility down the
stream. That's the best trade suggestion we're getting.
Okay, so let's see here. What else? Nash, as I look through some of these other contents, I'd love to get your sort of reactions to this idea.
Yeah, I'm actually going to take a different route than Tom. I think it's a good deal for both sides. I think it's a typical deal that you'd see at 6 years of a prospect and outfielder with big power. I actually think that Rooker's 26. You get his ages 26 to 31 seasons. I think you're kind of getting him into his prime rather than someone. I mean, he has over 50 home runs in the minors. I think he's ready to go. He showed us that. Hit 316 when he came up, 21 plate appearances. But I think Rooker's ready to go. And so I think he's someone the Reds would want to plug and play, honestly, to start 2021. For me, I think the difference is you mentioned the price tag, Nick. I think you can get 2, and I know Iglesias is really strong. You know, Tom mentioned he's a stud, but I think you might be able to get 2 guys who can help you for that this offseason. When you mentioned Hand getting his option decline, I think you have an opportunity here in this bullpen market. Again, Tom mentioned it's hard to predict. There might be an opportunity for you to really take advantage if you're the Twins and kind of bulk it up on the back end with quantity like we've seen them do in prior years. I think you're muted, Nick.
Thank you, sir. That's a very valid point. Last Thursday, I think, Tom joined us for an episode on the relief free agent market. It is very deep. We see some major deals happening there, which obviously presents a good alternative to giving up someone like Rooker. But as you point out, he's an older prospect and he has his flaws, a lot of strikeouts, maybe not a strong defensive player. So, but other people I think are having the same thought. I see Byron says, nice idea, but why not keep May and Rooker for less money? I mean, to your point, you could sign a guy like May and probably Clippard and Romo both for the money it would cost for Iglesias. Can't deny that. Ron says, I do not like this trade. 1 year compared to 6, not worth it. That's going to be a recurring theme because trading young talent to get established talent, that is sort of the trade-off that you make, right? But a valid point. Twins Daily, I think this is Seth, says of note, Brent Rooker is scheduled for an episode of Twins Spotlight next week. Awkward. No, I mean, look, we love Brent Rooker.
Well, you better call up Raisel Iglesias now and get him on the show.
Brent is a great guy. Came on my my podcast too. He's phenomenal. Nothing's personal here.
Yes.
We're talking about, he's a great follow on Twitter. He's a really funny guy, really super smart guy. Very likable player.
Asset valuations that we're talking about here. This is all very theoretical. So,
if anything, it's complimentary.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Raisel Iglesias, man, you're getting traded for a superstar reliever. Good for you. Mike says, I do not care about Rooker, but the cost is too much for this season. I'll buy that. That's a valid point. Ron says, just sign Iglesias next year if he's available as a free agent. Also, that's true. I mean, he's got 1 year left of control, which I guess is a knock against him. You're trading Brent Rooker in his 6 years for 1 season. John says, stop drinking. You know what? No. I'm going to continue to enjoy. I'm having an ectogasm from
Nice.
Drecker Brewing in Fargo, North Dakota, one of my favorite breweries. So yeah, I will. Maybe I was drinking when I came up with this idea. I don't know, but good input. I think it's fairly reasonable in the kind of deal that we'll talk about, where the Twins are maybe picking up some salary and giving up less than they would normally in a trade. Now, let's talk about Tom's first idea. A bigger superstar, a big name. Tom has a trade between the Twins and the Rays, where the Twins acquire starting pitcher and ace, Blake Snell.
What?
3 years of team control. And the Rays would be getting back Alex Kirilloff, the Twins outfield prospect, who is either the first or second best prospect in the system, depending on where you land. And, of course, 6 years of control with him. This does seem like the kind of deal the Rays would make to me. Tom, why don't you walk us through your thinking here?
So I tried to, in the two deals that I built here, I tried to really nail the two things that I hear the most from Twins fans. And the first one is they should trade for a top-of-the-rotation starter with multiple years of team control. Blake Snell, here we go, a former Cy Young Award winner, a guy who is a top-of-the-rotation starting pitcher. Obviously ended his season with some friction there with Kevin Cash getting taken out of the game early in his last start. He actually was upset a few times in this postseason run with the Rays about how he was used. It seemed like they're fine. I think that's just kind of the way you'd have to deal with things when you're pitching for the Rays. He made all kind of the right comments as you would expect in his post-game interview and all that stuff. Not that he wasn't upset and he didn't want the ball, but maybe that's a bit of an overstatement that there's friction there. But kind of like you alluded to, the Rays, this just feels like the kind of thing that the Rays would do. As we see here, Blake Snell is owed $40.8 million through 2023. So that's 3 seasons. I don't think that's a very high cost for a pitcher of his caliber. But for the Rays, who are always kind of trying to keep the bottom line low, I mean, they declined Charlie Morton's option, and he's definitely worth what that option was, in my opinion. So they're always trying to get a little cheaper. They also are a team that doesn't seem to have any trouble finding these pitchers. And on the other hand, their offense this postseason was so reliant on Randy Rosarena, because Brandon Lau was really their only other guy, and he had a bad postseason. So they really need some offense. Alex Kirilloff definitely represents a huge offensive upgrade, could be sort of a guy who is a center point of their lineup to build around. So it's them trading from a point of strength to address an area of weakness, kind of in a sense the same thing the Twins are doing in this way. Not that the Twins are really that rotation starved, but man, another guy up at the top of that rotation would look really nice. And kind of the same thing with that Rooker trade suggestion. There are so many corner outfielders, first baseman types in this organization right now. A lot of good ones. Not to take anything away. I'm not saying I don't believe that Alex Kirilloff is going to reach his potential at all. But it's just there's Brent Rooker, there's Trevor Larnach, they keep adding guys, they keep drafting high bats, they keep investing in the international market. Even they've signed outfielders in addition to that. So it's a kind of strength for strength type of trade idea.
I like it, and a good pitch for that reason. A few things that we mentioned here. He won the AL Cy Young in 2018. That year, he won 21 games with a 1.89 ERA in the AL East. What a pitcher. The stat here that I've got listed, I think, really says a lot. Since 2018, over the last 3 seasons, the highest swing and miss rates for starting pitchers in the major leagues. It goes like this: Jacob deGrom, Max Scherzer, Blake Snell. That's pretty good company, right? And as you can see with this visual, if you're watching the show right now, every pitch in his deep arsenal, he throws 4 pitches with regularity, and they're all healthily above average in velocity. This is a guy with some of the nastiest stuff in baseball. We saw it on display in the postseason. Nash, what do you think about the idea of acquiring Snell and giving up perhaps your number 1 prospect in Kirilloff?
Yeah, I think, and I'm not here, we just watched Blake Snell pitch phenomenally well in the postseason, but since 2019, so since he won that Cy Young Award, his FIP is 365, Jake Odorizzi's 358. So I don't want to, sit here and think that the last 2 years, Blake Snell, I don't think has been as dominant as we're used to seeing from him. I think Alex Kirilloff has superstar upside. I also think he has a really high floor because of just his pure hitting ability. And I think in my eyes at least, I think he's the future of the franchise for the Twins. Royce Lewis, we hope he can get there. maybe a more volatile prospect in terms of just raw tools. But I think Kirilloff with his hit tool and just the way that he takes his at-bats, I think is a surefire bet to me, more so than anyone in the system if he can stay healthy. So I would be really hesitant to give up Kirilloff for anyone, and maybe more so that than ripping on Snell for maybe not being himself as much the last 2 years. He's still great. I really like Alex Kirilloff.
Yeah, I mean, he's as close to a can't trade prospect, I think, as you have in this system. Tom makes a good point that they do have some depth behind him that would ease it a little bit. I mean, I see Byron here says Kirilloff is going to be a capital letter stud. Hate to lose him, but Larnach eases the loss. I'd do that trade in a second. Works for both teams. So you've got some support there, Tom. Joseph says I would maybe try to make a Snell deal happen with Larnach plus first, but would still be happy if it took Kirilloff to get the deal done. Patrick says, no, Buxton for Snell. I would want to keep Rooker younger? Rooker?
Maybe a roster he was making.
Roster younger. Yeah. I was like, is this a John Rocker reference? Yeah, Buxton could. I think the 2 years of control and he's getting a little expensive. And do they still have Kiermaier? I don't know if he's exactly a fit for the Rays in the same way that a guy like Kirilloff will appeal to them. John says, okay, better trade. Won't happen, but like that pitcher idea. So you've got a fan in John. He did not like my first suggestion, Tom, but he likes this one a little better. Ron says that would be a nice trade for both teams. I would not like to lose Kirilloff, but Snell would be a good to pass on if Rays would agree. John says, can we afford when the contract comes up? Probably not. He's got 3 years left, though. So those are the kind of trade-offs you're going to have to make. You're losing 6 years of Alex Kirilloff, who's potentially, like Nash said, a star caliber player. I mean, could a player who hasn't made a major league regular season appearance yet have his stock in as much of an upward trajectory as a guy who came in for an elimination playoff game to make his major league debut and looked as comfortable and ready as Alex Kirilloff did? I mean, this guy is a major league outfielder on opening day next year. And I think that makes him a very appealing piece. Maybe the kind who could land you a top tier starter with altogether a pretty reasonable contract in Ian Snell. I think he's owed 11, 13, and 16 million the next 3 years with a few incentives in there, but that's something you can really build around. So I like that idea a lot, Tom. That's a good framework for a Snell trade. And I think he's going to be a name that's out there on the trade market this offseason. Nash's first proposal brings us into the National League with a guy by the name of Trevor Story, a shortstop, a stud shortstop. And in this deal, the Twins are giving up another tough-to-lose player in starting pitching prospect right-hander Jordan Belazovic. Nash, tell us a little bit about what went into this trade in your mind.
Yeah, I think the two biggest and rightly so arguments about this trade would be, that's not enough to get Trevor Story. I would say Trevor Story is due $18.5 million, one more year. We know the Rockies are looking to cut payroll. I think there's a really, really good chance that Trevor Story gets dealt. Also, really important to remember, the Rockies, I think more than any team in baseball, struggle to sign, develop, and keep starting pitching. They can't. People don't want to go there, and I understand they don't want to pitch at Coors. They haven't been able to develop starters very well. Jordan Belazovic would step in as their number one pitching prospect. He's a top 100 prospect. They don't have a top 100 prospect that's a pitcher. And I think it'd be enough. In my mind, it would be. And then also, what are you doing with Jorge Polanco? I think you shift him to that utility role, and you don't have to sign that. Polanco's only making $4.33 million this year, or in 2021. So I think that's a salary that you would pay a utility man. Actually, for Polanco, that'd be a great deal. And you're taking advantage of Josh Donaldson's contract. You're taking advantage of Jose Barrios and Byron Buxton while they're in Minnesota. It's a win-now move. Again, 1 year for 6 years of Balazovic. I personally think, I'm not in the front office, but just from my eye test, I think it would be enough. And I think it'd be just a blockbuster move for the Twins to try to win the World Series in 2021.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't yet pull up this next slide here, but a few facts about Trevor Story that I think help make the case. Here we have a player who is still very young in his prime, turns 28 on Sunday, actually. So happy birthday upcoming to Trevor Story. As you mentioned, owed $18.5 million this year, and I think that's, maybe some people are not finding this that realistic. John says, don't need a shortstop, mute his line. John, we need a shortstop. I don't know, we need a shortstop in some capacity. Cody says you've been drinking, obviously.
Cody.
So I think it is reasonable to look at this trade on its face and say, can you really get a player, an elite shortstop? Because hey, let's look at Trevor Story. This is a 2-time NL All-Star. And what I love about Trevor Story is we know he's an elite slugger. He leads all major league shortstops in home runs since 2016, 134 bombs. He's ahead of Lindor and Baez. And he's fast, and he's an elite defender. You can see here outs above average, very much in the red. Sprint speed is at the very top tier there on the StatCast chart. He led the National League in triples and stolen bases in 2020. He runs, he plays defense, he hits for power. This is a stud. There are some questions maybe about how the offense will translate out of Coors Field, but still, this is a great player. So it's reasonable to look at this and say, are you really getting him for one pitching prospect who's not, a top tier pitching prospect in the majors? But players like this on the 1 year, and $18.5 million he's owed next year, I don't know that the Rockies can stomach that. I think it's almost guaranteed they're going to trade either Story or Nolan Arenado this offseason. It's been made known that they are trying to cut some salary, and I think Story makes a lot more sense. You can free up salary for a guy that's going to be a free agent after next year anyways, and you'll know a lot more about the whole economic picture after last year. So it gives them a little bit of flexibility. Tom, do you think that Jordan Balazovic is enough to get this deal done, and would you do it?
It is really hard to say. I think it's like the Marcus Stroman trade to the Mets was a good example of people were really shocked that the two pitchers that the Blue Jays ended up getting got the deal done because they were ranked so much lower than some hitters that people speculated the Twins would have given up. But some teams are going to value pitching much, 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 much more than hitting in a trade. And I think Nash hit the nail on the head. Like, what free agent in the right mind is looking to sign in Colorado? Their best way to develop pitching other than the draft is going to be for trading guys. So will that get it done? I'm not sure. In a vacuum, if that's like if that's all that the Rockies could get, I would bet that they would take that because you're right. You have a guy who's up against the final year of his contract. I like the fact we're talking about Trevor Story because we have a lot of these guys who are top prospects. They come into the league. They're the new hot. They're the sexy player for a year. And then kind of as their career goes along, they kind of fade away. This guy's one of the best players in baseball still, especially when you take into that positional scarcity into account as a shortstop. And one thing to point about the Coors Field effect, DJ LeMahieu's actually hit better since he's left Colorado. It's so hard for players to adjust to the thin air in Colorado and then try to hit on the road and sort of keep both of those speeds going at the same time. Actually playing in Coors can hurt some guys because it's just so weird. The only thing that I'm not sure is there isn't like a super need at shortstop. There's definitely an argument there, and I get that. Nash made some good points. But if you trade away Balazovic, really the only guy at the top of your prospect bunch as a starting pitcher is Juan Duran. But beyond those two guys, you have like Matt Cantorino, you have Cole Sands, but I think it's a pretty big step down from those top two pitching prospects to the rest of them. And you just have so many bats in the system now. And again, Colorado probably not interested in those guys in this case, but that's what would hurt for me on this trade is giving up one of those top arms in the system.
Agreed. They're hard to come by, and I think pretty highly of Balazovic. Chris says, wait a year and sign one of Story, Seager, Lindor, lots of free agent shortstops next year. Very true.
Mookie Betts was supposed to be a free agent this offseason.
I will say I think the 1 year thing makes sense just because hopefully by then Royce Lewis is ready to play shortstop, or Polanco and Lewis in center. So
it gives you a line on the ability to re-sign one of these guys if you're interested in that. He just called out the Mookie Betts example. John says we don't need a shortstop. Polanco at a good cost, and rookies are chasing up. That is true. This is a go for it move. It's not a needed move. They don't have a need at shortstop. And if you believe Polanco can bounce back, he was an all-star a year ago. Let's not forget. You've got him on that long-term deal that is a very good value and allows you to invest elsewhere. A reasonable counterpoint. Although Tad says we need a shortstop. He couldn't agree more with that. Ron mentions that Simmons and Andrelton Simmons as a free agent would not cost as much. That's true. And Simmons, a phenomenal defender, much like Story, and a guy with some offensive ability. Joseph says, I don't trust Rockies hitters except Nolan. Tom, I think your point was very valid about LeMahieu. That guy left Colorado and had no problem, won the batting title this year. And I think Trevor Story is just a great hitter. Although the strikeout rate is a little bit of a red flag, and the Twins have some guys in that situation already. Seth says, interesting, very curious what Cleveland will get for Lindor. Cost for Story should be pretty similar, even less maybe. Well, hey, Seth, it's funny you bring that up. My second trade proposal of the evening. The Twins are making an intra-division deal with the Cleveland Indians. They are getting shortstop Francisco Lindor in his last year of arbitration team control. And, it says Rockies get, that should say Indians are getting outfielder Max Kepler under team control for 3 years at a pretty good rate, thanks to the favorable contract extension the Twins signed him to. And the team's other top starting pitching prospect, Yohan Duran. So I think Francisco Lindor is clearly the biggest name on the trade market this year. So I wanted to talk about him one way or another. But as I looked at this, I kind of started to talk myself into it. Now, Lindor is in the same situation as Story in that he has 1 year left until free agency, and he's going to make a boatload of money in 2021. We're thinking maybe around like 20 million, maybe even more in his last year of arbitration. But this is a superstar elite player in his prime. He turns 27 on Saturday. That's kind of funny. Lindor and Story, birthdays one day after the other. But a 4-time All-Star, 2-time Gold Glover, a durable, everyday superstar player. He has led the American League in plate appearances in 3 of the past 4 seasons, leads all Major League shortstops in Fangraphs wins above replacement since he debuted in 2015. You can see the 2020 StatCast ratings there. They're off the charts. I mean, we all know Francisco Lindor is one of the best players in baseball. It's been made pretty clear via rumors that the Cleveland Indians are going to unload him and try to shed that salary. And for all the reasons we've discussed, now there is going to be a lot of interest in Francisco Lindor, but how many teams out there are really willing to give up a boatload of talent for a 1 year of a player who, as has been mentioned, going to be a free agent potentially next offseason? And you've got to be in go for it mode if you're making this. And the Twins are. I understand that the intra-division thing is a little bit of challenging. That doesn't happen too often, but I think the Twins and Indians are both teams that would overlook that if they both feel like they're getting the deal that they want. And I think this just fills needs for both teams. Cleveland has had such a hard time finding outfielders who are capable everyday players. Max Kepler is a leadoff man, a very good hitter, very good defender, plays center field, under that reasonable control for the next several years. So you're keeping him, finally getting a little bit of a long-term solution in the outfield. And I throw in Yohan Duran. I mean, we know how Cleveland likes to develop great high-velocity arms. It's a tough package to give up. But at the same time, I don't know if it would remotely get it done under normal circumstances, but I don't know how many teams are going to throw top prospects in $20 million to get 1 year of Francisco Lindor. And it's the same case here. I would move Polanco to, a utility role, which I think he'd be effective in, that covers that need. So you're not spending money on someone like Kike Hernandez. You're freeing up a little money to pay Lindor with Max Kepler's contract coming off the books. That's $6 million. And I would love to, quite honestly, sign him to a long-term extension and make Francisco Lindor your franchise centerpiece. He's an unbelievable player. I see this as the Twins version of the Mookie Betts trade, basically. The Dodgers went out and got a superstar player in the game. They won the World Series. They signed him long-term. They are set. Why can't the Twins do the same thing, Tom?
The Twins don't have a lot of long-term money. It's obviously the Josh Donaldson deal, but that's not really all that long-term. And yeah, I mean, the thing, and we kind of mentioned with Story, shortstops are so difficult to find. And you get a guy who can both be a major contributor on offense and really help out your pitching staff a ton defensively. That's such a game changer for a team. Max Kepler, kind of going back to that outfield discussion, the Twins do have plenty of corner outfielders. So the way that the Twins value these guys might be different than another org because they have a bucket load of these corner outfielders that they can go to. But again, I don't really like the idea of trading either of these 2 top pitching prospects in the system. As much as, there is no such thing as a pitching prospect. If you look back, a few years ago at the Twins pitching prospect list, it is guys we were all wishing right now we could have traded, to be honest. But I just think that's just a weakness, I think, in the system as far as especially the top of the system that I don't feel great about moving more of those top pitching prospects.
Yeah, I mean, Duran is tough to give up because there's a good chance he's going to be a great pitcher in this league. And it seems like the commenters are divided. John says stop, no chance. Ron says too much for 1 year and costs too much. Cody says Duran should be untouchable. He seems to agree with Tom's thinking on that. Yeah, I came in thinking initially this is too little to give up, and then I kind of talked myself into thinking, well, maybe it's too much to give up. I see that Seth here made a comment and said the Dodgers got bets for Verdugo and Jeter Downs, and that's 1 year and 3 years versus Kepler and 6 years of Duran. That might be a lot to give up. I don't know. To get this trade to happen in the division, to outbid some other teams, I think it'll be tough. Nash, is your thought that this is too little to give up, too much to give up, or maybe just about right to actually make something happen?
I think it's a ton if he wasn't in the division. I'm sorry. It's a ton. Yeah, right. It's a ton if he wasn't in the division. So if you were trading like him from the National League and you're giving up Kepler and Duran, to me, that's too much. But you make a good point. He's in the division. It's going to cost a premium. We know that. I also love the idea. I agree with Seth of keeping him long-term. I think that would be a phenomenal move for the Twins to sign him up long-term. But the nightmare scenario is you trade away Kepler, you trade away Duran, you get 1 year of Lindor, and then Kepler and Duran whoop you for the next 3 to 6 years. And you don't want that either. But if you're able to do a sign and trade type of thing and you feel like you have an inside track, I really think Frankie Lindor wants to test free agency fully. But if you feel like you have an inside track and you think you can lock him up, it becomes a lot more interesting to me. I love Duran for sure. And, we're all kind of prospect huggers of our own teams, of course. And Max has 4 years left. He's got that team option at the end. So I'm hesitant to do it. But I also think, again, if you can get a guy like Lindor long-term, I think you have to think about it.
Oh, it'd be so fun. Yeah.
Oh, just so fun.
You look at the model. What did the Dodgers do? They're stacked with star players. And I think the Twins, and I don't think Kepler's quite at that star level. He's a good regular. But, man, you bring in Lindor, you couple him with some of these prospects that are coming up, Donaldson, Buxton, Jeffers, Sano, Arise. You've got yourself a really nice collection of players here, and they can live without Kepler. They can put Kirilloff right in right field to replace him there. Not that I would want to lose Kepler. Losing Duran, even tougher. But, this is a guy that they acquired for Eduardo Escobar for half a season of him. So, again, the Twins have shown an ability to acquire and develop pitching under this new front office. Under the old front office, I think I'd be a lot less willing to give up a Balazovic or a Duran. So, Seth says, I like the idea of keeping Lindor long-term, favorite non-Twins player in baseball, until Corey Seager took that title in the playoffs. Oh, you're a man of flickering loyalties, Seth. Max is so good. I want to keep him. He also has the same name as my cat, says Patrick Fonder. We got a lot of cat discussion going on here. He also says, don't be silly. New York teams will get him. I got to say, my number one fear in the Derby for Lindor, if we were actually trying to make a significant effort to get him, is the Mets. They just got a new owner in Steve Cohen, who seems to be very aggressively trying to inject some energy and enthusiasm into that team. I think he's down to open up his wallet and won't mind taking on the money or maybe even signing him to a big long-term deal. And I just don't know if the Mets can compete with the Twins if they make an offer like this in terms of the value. So, I think this is an intriguing kind of idea. I like talking about the concept of bringing Lindor, but with him being in the same division, with the Twins having Polanco, with what they'd probably have to give up and pay, probably a long shot, I have to admit. Now we're on to Tom's trade proposal. Now I've been exciting to get to this one. This just shows, look, Tom is just a creative guy whose mind works in ways that I can't possibly understand. He has concocted a 3-way trade between the Minnesota Twins and Detroit Tigers and Washington Nationals, in which the Twins are trading away Miguel Sano and his 2 years of remaining control, $23 million he is owed. I believe he is currently the second highest paid player on the 2021 roster in terms of guaranteed salaries behind Donaldson. Twins would be getting back in this deal infielder Starlin Castro and his 1 year of control from the Nationals, starting pitcher Daniel Norris and his 1 year of control from the Tigers, and Nats reliever Kyle McGowan, who's still controlled for 6 more years. Tigers getting out of this deal. Relief pitcher Will Harris from the Nationals, Yan Gomez, catcher from the Nationals, and lefty pitcher Devin Smeltzer from the Twins. So, Tom, walk us through this one, please.
So this is in addition to the top starting pitcher with multiple years, what else does everybody say? Trade Miguel Sano. I hear that almost more than anything ever from Twins fans. And some of the ideas that I've heard from Twins fans in thinking that I think people still think Miguel Sano's like on that top prospect, level. This is what it would look like. That's kind of my point of putting this trade together. This is what a Miguel Sano trade would look like. And let's take a look at it and say, do we still really want to do this? Are we interested in this? Miguel Sano's trade value is extremely low. I used a tool. It's not like bulletproof, but I think this is a fun tool to play with. And I think usually if you're honest with yourself, you can get good results out of. Baseballtradevalues.com is the website. I built this trade on that site. It got accepted. So and I'll kind of run through sort of my logic behind each team here. And with the Twins, it is Miguel Sano is owed $23 million the next 2 years. He's not really an asset defensively. He doesn't run the bases well. He has the worst strikeout rate in baseball over the last 3 years. Over the last 3 years, his weighted runs created plus is lower than CJ Cron's over the last 3 years. So he would be very easily replaceable. In addition, I mean, Alex Kirilloff played a lot of first base in the minors in 2019. So you have a lot of internal options too. Now, I'm not saying I'm giving up on Miguel Sano. He hits the ball harder than anyone in baseball as well when he makes contact. So he definitely still has some value, but it's almost like that $23 million commitment means like he has to be as good as you think he is to be worth that almost. So that the motivation for the Twins is partly to shed some salary. Now, it has to be a 3-team deal because I don't think you're going to find a team that's also willing to take on salary and give you something of value. So the Twins getting back Starlin Castro, he's only 30 years old still. He debuted at 20. He's just one of these guys that's been around forever. And I'm glad you mentioned Kike Hernandez. Starlin Castro actually has a better OPS against left-handed pitching than Kike Hernandez does. And everybody's kind of really fixated on getting Kike Hernandez as a bench bat who can hit against lefties. Starlin Castro is actually better than that. You are taking back $7 million from that, from Castro's salary, but that needs to happen. I mean, if you're getting rid of $23 million of Miguel Sano, you have to take some money back. Daniel Norris really broke out this year as a great multi-inning reliever for the Tigers. He only has 1 year left. It's going to be about $3 million, but if you look at his production, he was actually similar to Tyler Duffy in terms of production. So this is a really nice bullpen piece. Kyle McGowan is just sort of a throw-in guy who I found if you lower the threshold enough to the amount of pitches he threw this year, the only guy who threw more sliders in all of baseball than Kyle McGowan was Matt Whistler. So I guarantee you this is a guy that the Twins front office knows and would be interested in. We go to the Nationals. Well, what are the Nationals getting out of this? They finished last in their division after winning the World Series. And with this big expanded playoffs, the World Series champions didn't get back into the postseason. They need to get younger. So Miguel Sano would help them there. And then also shedding Castro, Harris, and Gomes would help them get younger while making the money match. And then they need power too. Juan Soto, one of the best hitters in baseball. Trey Turner is excellent. But beyond that, they don't really have a big power threat. So them getting Sano as just a power guy that they kind of hope maybe they can fix some things and a change of scenery would help with them. That's the motivation on their end. And in this deal, both the Twins and the Nationals managed to shed payroll a little bit, because all the Tigers have to do is say, we'll give up 1 year of Daniel Norris and we'll just take these contracts on. Well, why would Detroit want that? They just added A.J. Hinch as their new manager. Will Harris had many good years in Houston with A.J. Hinch as his manager. I think he's a guy that helps them sort of establish themselves as more of a veteran team. Yan Gomes, again, a World Series champion catcher who's been around a long time. You have those two guys, helping you win some games, helping you develop some of their young pitchers that they have in that organization. Devin Smeltzer is basically the Daniel Norris replacement as a left-hander, except for he has 5 years of team control versus 1. So yeah, basically the Tigers are getting, taking that negative from the Nationals if they're getting older and saying, well, we need some veteran guys to help get our young guys going, and then getting just another arm with some control in Smeltzer. Would I necessarily do this trade? To be honest, probably not, but I wanted to put together a realistic trade that had Miguel Sano just to let people kind of know this is probably what a Miguel Sano trade would look like at this point.
I love that you did it because it's true. Everyone's trade Sano. I understand why people feel that way. I understand the frustration with him in all regards. So the stats that we've pulled up here show, to some extent, the argument for why you would trade him, and also the reason why I personally would be very, very afraid to give him up. Look at the StatCast rankings. 100th percentile in exit velocity, 100th percentile in barrel percentage, 99th percentile in hard hit percentage. The exit velocity leaders in Major League Baseball in 2020, Fernando Tatis Jr., Miguel Sano, Christian Yelich, Mike Trout. Those are three of the bona fide best MVP caliber players in baseball, and Miguel Sano. Obviously, we're all a little burnt. I see John says trade Sano unless he gets off treadmill, hits the treadmill all offseason. Come on. We are afraid he is Ortiz. He is not. Relax. I'm not so sure. I mean, he's not going to be the same thing as Ortiz, but when a guy hits the ball that hard, yes, we see the downside too. He led major leagues in strikeouts, 90, strikeout rate, 43.9% in 2020. He's one of the most strikeout-prone pitchers in the history of the game, really. If you compare him to anyone else, his swing and miss percentage was in the first percentile. He swung and missed more than anyone in the game. Doesn't run well. 12th percentile for expected batting average. So the downsides of Sano's game are obvious, and I think there's a legitimate argument to be made that the $11 million owed to him next year could be better spent elsewhere when you could, I see, let's see, where did Seth say? Oh, no, wrong comment. He said, is the idea here to relieve salary and open up first base for Rooker or Kirilloff? Yeah, you could do something like that. You can spend that money somewhere else. So you can certainly see the logic behind it, but I personally am not giving up Sano in this deal. And because this contortion of a complex, ridiculous, convoluted idea is like the best idea I can think of that would actually make sense to move him, I just don't think it makes sense to trade him. Nash, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. My main thing with this, Tom, I love your creativity as well. I don't know if this makes the 2021 Twins all that better in my mind. Like, I think Starlin Castro, I don't know if he makes $6 million if he's a free agent. And that's what he's going to make this year. I don't know. The Twins need that for sure. They need a utility guy like that. So I agree. Like he's the type of guy they'll probably bring in. But I lean with Nick in that I think, as crazy as it sounds and how long we've known Sano and how long he was a prospect, a highly touted prospect, I still think in a way he is raw, right? Like I still think he has a lot of refining to do as a major league hitter. And I think they invested in him last year with hopes of doing that. And I think they're going to continue to try to do that. I think he has more value to the Twins than he does to anyone else. I also think that if they want to bring Nelson Cruz back, him and Sano are like besties. I think that's honestly like a big factor here. If they want to bring Nelson Cruz back, it would be hard to convince Cruz to come back if you're going to trade away his like little brother, Miguel Sano. Now they're two peas in a pod. So I think that's honestly a factor that needs to be said as well. I'm hesitant to move him now. I think you wait another year or a year after that even and see.
Yeah. Byron says betting against Sano, but opening holes for Rooker, Kirilloff, and Larnach. I mean, that's a legitimate point. If everyone kind of sticks around, there's no openings for some of these top prospects to find their way into, which is, I don't know.
I think that's maybe like the biggest takeaway of any kind of trades discussion. And I kind of felt this way last offseason. Is like the Twins have to trade. I think some of or else they're going to be in the same situation they are with Eddie Rosario, and where you're probably just going to end up non-tendering somebody and getting nothing in return from them down the line. Just kind of the last to wrap up that Sano conversation. Yeah, I mean, his value is at its absolute lowest, and that's probably never really a good strategy to trade a guy. You'd want him to kind of hopefully build up more value. Yeah, and I think Nash made a good point. The three guys that the Twins would get in this trade are all some players you could find on the free agent market, pretty similar players. The motivation really would be to get Sano off the roster without having to take on a bunch of salary, essentially.
Yeah. Swendini says, I feel like we were always saying that, though, regarding the refinement of Sano's game. He says Sano was refining his swing. It's been 2 or 3 years since we said that, so what's the move? That is valid. I mean, he's still – It's a bummer that Sano has not. I mean, he struck out 44% of the time this year. You would hope he would start cutting it down a little bit. He's always going to be strikeout prone, but this is ridiculous. There's no denying that, but there's a lot of upside. And even with all the strikeouts, the guy hit 33 home runs in 100 games last year. So it's not like he hasn't shown his ability to be an elite power hitter in terms of production. We love all you guys' comments. We love all your critiques and mentions here on the trades. So please keep those coming. And I see some people have submitted some of their own ideas. I'm going to try to run through some of those real quick when we wrap up, which is going to be pretty soon here, because we are on to our last of the proposed trades here. And this is Nash's second trade, and I think a very intriguing idea. So we've got a trade here with the Minnesota Twins and Milwaukee Brewers, the cross-state rivals. A Brewers team that probably will be looking to cut some salary this year. They're coming off a tough season. They're not big spenders to begin with. So Nash is targeting two players who are just entering arbitration and are probably also the two best pitchers on the Milwaukee staff, starting pitcher Brandon Woodruff and relief pitcher Josh Hader. I like that you brought Josh Hader into this conversation, Nash, because this is a guy Twins fans have been talking about wanting to get for a long time. He's the best relief pitcher in baseball, probably. Brewers are getting a haul. This is a prospect quantity deal. So Nash has us giving up outfielder Trevor Larnach, starting pitcher Blaine Enlow, outfielder Matt Wallner, and starting pitcher Dakota Chalmers. All those guys controllable for 6 years, all of them very cheap. Nash, walk us through your thinking on this one a little bit.
Yeah, I think when you look at this initially, what I come back to is that Milwaukee's farm system is ranked dead last by MLB Pipeline. So I think a quantity deal would be something that they'd be looking for. Brandon Woodruff, since 2017, is tied for 15th with Justin Verlander with a 331 FIP. Tied for 7th since 2019 with Hyunjin Ryu with a 308 FIP. Also averages 96.6 miles an hour with his fastball and has a slider, if you look into it a little bit, that's underrated and underused. And I think that's something that would really entice the Twins. As we know, if you brought that in a little bit more, maybe you see him become a top 10 pitcher, but by all means, he's been 15 to 20 range, number one, Brandon Woodruff. And then Josh Hader is one of the best in the world. And we saw in 2020, he can struggle with walks sometimes and gave up a lot of hard contact. Marwin Gonzalez in 2019 home run. But the stuff is so pure, and he's so dominant when he's on, Josh Hader, that I think you add him to the back of the bullpen, and him and Tyler Duffy, if you decide to move out from Taylor Rogers or bring him back, that's a super bullpen on the back end all of a sudden with Josh Hader in there. This might not be enough. I think when you look at it, 4 years of Woodruff in a market now and in a league where starting pitching is so highly sought after, and a guy who has been really dominant, has a huge fastball, I mentioned. These are probably their two biggest assets with Christian Yelich there. This would be a massive rebuild for the Brewers, but again, worst farm system in baseball. I think it would be a quantity deal. You get Trevor Larnach, you pair him up with Yelich and Hira. I think this would be exciting for them to get a haul. It might take more, if they asked around. But I think the Brewers will be open to it just because I don't know which direction they're heading. I don't know if they're going to contend. Again, their farm system isn't there. They might be enticed by this. And I think if you're the Twins, this is long-term. This is short-term, but it is kind of long-term. You get 4 years of Woodruff. You get 3 years of Hader. For me, it makes a lot of sense when you're in your contention window to go get these two guys.
Yeah, look, here, we pull up the stats here. Woodruff is a Super 2 eligible for arbitration. He's got 4 years of team control left. Hader, with 3 years of arbitration still ahead of him, he's a 2-time All-Star. He leads all Major League relievers in K per 9 with 15.9. Also leads, since 2018, also leads all Major League relievers in wins above replacement, according to Fangraphs. Brandon Woodruff had a huge breakout year. Look at all the red. Look at all the red on the StatCast sliders for both of these guys. Tremendous pitchers. Woodruff tied Kenta Maeda and Zach Greinke for 8th among MLB starters in wins above replacement, according to Fangraphs. So he moved up to that elite tier. He'd be quite a pitcher to add. My reaction here, I guess, is I just don't think this is enough to get it done for the Twins. I think that the Brewers are giving up massive value in this deal, and there's going to be a lot of people lining up. Some good quantity here, and you make a good point about the Brewers farm system needing to fill that up a little bit. I just think you're going to need to give up at least 2 of those really top-tier prospects to make something like this happen. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, I think to get both of those guys, probably Lewis has to be involved in the trade. Or kind of like Seth pointed out, they'd probably want Balazovic or Duran with Larnach. Could be just because if you think about it from their perspective, they could probably, and I do get I like that logic of the Brewers maybe being a team that's more likely to look for quantity in filling up that system again. But if you take that perspective too, it would make a lot more sense for them to trade these guys in separate trades. Mm-hmm. I think Brandon Woodruff is not really a household name. He's super good. He had a great year, kind of under the radar because there's so many good starting pitchers in the NL. I think everybody kind of knows about Josh Hader by now. He's been just a beast. But yeah, I mean, I would not be at all surprised if the Twins ask about either of those guys. And I think the logic behind them having a poor minor league system and the Twins being a good team with a lot of depth in the minor league system. I mean, this might be the most likely sort of trade conversation that's going to go down this winter, but I don't think that package would get it done.
Yeah. That's a good point about splitting them up too, Nick. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, just going to run through a couple of the comments here. Patrick says, I like this deal. Seth says, also of note, Matt Wallner is scheduled for an episode of Twins Spotlight next week. We're just, maybe not anymore. I don't know. Everyone's going to cancel because we're just talking about trading them all away.
We can't trade any more prospects, you guys.
Swendini says, I feel like the Brew Crew would not do that. They get promising prospects, but they lose their ace of the rotation and bullpen. Seth says, I have to think the Brewers might ask for Belizovic or Duran in a deal like this. Byron says, a lot to give up, and it hurts, but the Twins could afford it. And if it hurts both sides, it's probably a good trade. Nate, we got a lot of input on this one. Nate says it depends on where the Brewers view their competitive cycle, but I think it'll be hard to pry a starting pitcher from them. Seems like 3 of those guys get you in a conversation for only Hader. Nash, any thoughts on some of the feedback or what Tom and I said?
Yeah, it makes sense. I think it's more of, and I'm glad Tom said it too, and you as well, Nick. It's more of an outline of who they would target. And great point. They would definitely split them up to get quantity, I think is a good way to look at it. But these are 2 guys in areas of need for the Twins. This deal wouldn't happen. I agree. Like, I think when I look at it deeper and further, I agree. It's definitely not enough, but I think this is a track that the Twins could go down and that I could see them doing, like Tom said. But yeah, I mean, I think in this market with the starting pitching, like I said as well, it's going to be really hard to not give up a Royce Lewis or not give up a Yohan Duran and get someone like Brandon Woodruff back, because like he's not a household name, but the numbers are there and he's a stud, So I think it would take a lot. As we were talking about last winter, we're like, oh, let's go out and get Noah Syndergaard, or let's go out and get, and then you'd say, oh, we'll take Buxton and Royce Lewis back. And everyone's like, whoa, that's what it takes that for starting pitchers in this day and age. Zach Wheeler got paid. These guys are going to get paid, and Woodruff's going to cost an arm and a leg.
Yeah, and it kind of to switch back to the free agent market, especially now that Stroman and Gausman have taken the qualifying offers. You don't have that, like we've discussed in some of these other trades, of where the fallback options in the free agent market are pretty decent. That's not there in the starting pitcher market anymore, outside of Trevor Bauer. So yeah, it might be a rough to get these starting pitchers, pry these starting pitchers away from these teams in trades.
Yeah. No, I like that you threw this one out there, Nash, because I think it exemplifies, kind of in the same way as Tom's idea for Snell did, a move that is an all-in move. Like, we are ready. This is our championship window. Let's go for it. But still strategically sound, because you're not trading for potentially 1 year of Lindor or Story. You're getting players that you have control over for several years. You're opening up that window and keeping it open, right? So I really like that part of it, and they're both kind of affordable. I think they make sense in the scope of how the Twins are trying to build their team. So while maybe the pieces don't quite make sense, I like what you're getting at here.
Thanks, Nick.
So I'm going to just rapid fire through some of these comments here and get your guys' thoughts on them before we kind of wrap up here. Top 2, well, this is not trade related, but Tom, who are the top 2 free agent starting pitchers we might target?
Oh man, we did the starting pitcher. Who did I already talked to 2 guys I talked about on the starting pitcher show already off the board.
So who's left?
Oh gosh, who? Why can I not remember? Who's the guy on San Diego?
Garrett Richards.
Garrett Richards is the guy who I think is probably for some reason, is the most likely guy the Twins would get. He has a 95-mile-per-hour fastball. He has a great slider. He is probably going to be in that kind of range that the Twins are looking at, and he's younger for a free agent. So that's one guy I could really see fit in the Twins' plans. That's the one that stuck out. But yeah, everything is just changed so much just since we talked about it 2 weeks ago.
It certainly has.
Hey, Tom, in 2020, against right-handed batters, minimum 90 at-bats, 10 starts, Garrett Richards, 7th opponent batting average, 189.
Nice.
Against righties. So
don't tell
like
the
that.
other teams that, though, Nash.
I know. I
let
like
the
that.
front offices know
I like
about
Garrett Richards.
this.
I'm going to talk about him tomorrow because I think he's interesting.
Patrick asks, would you like to see the Twins go after Corey Kluber in a trade? Nash, would you?
Well, Corey Kluber is a free agent. But yeah, so we wouldn't have to trade for him, which is nice. No prospects given up. Yeah, I mean, I think he's a good reclamation guy. And when you look at the starting pitcher market, like we said, now it's Tanaka and now a lot of those reclamation projects with James Paxton and Corey Kluber and, guys who have been hurt, even Garrett Richards, who has had trouble staying healthy. So, yeah, I mean, if you feel like there's still something there from Corey Kluber, even close to what he's been, I'd be interested in it. But would I commit $7-8 million to him? I wouldn't, looking at the payroll situation for the Twins.
Yeah, it's a tough spot in that regard. Although, of course, Falvey, has some familiarity. I mean, you always have those Cleveland connections, so you kind of have to think about that. Let's see. Keep on moving through here. While I get to that, I want to talk about as we wrap up here a little bit. I think that all these trades we've been discussing kind of fall into 3 buckets, if you will. I think that there are 3 kind of paths the Twins might take in terms of making a trade. Either they are taking on some salary because they realize we are in this position where a lot of teams are trying to shed salary, and there is a very advantageous opportunity to acquire a high caliber talent while maybe not giving up what you would normally, have to give up in a trade. We talked about that with Lindor, Story. Another scenario is that the Twins are freeing up salary. I don't think they're going to be shedding salary, but they might want to, say, get rid of a contract like Sano's, in Tom's example, to be able to spend it elsewhere or just give themselves a little more flexibility, what have you. And the third model is the Twins giving up really a top prospect for a star player. And I think that's what we're kind of discussing with Larnach and this package of prospects going for those Milwaukee guys, Kirilloff, going to Tampa for Snell. And that's the kind of trade that the Twins made last offseason. They gave up Gratterall. They got Kenta Maeda. I think that's the model of what that trade could look like. So my question to you guys, we'll start with you, Tom. Which of these models do you think is most likely for the Twins, and which one makes the most sense? Maybe it's both.
Man, I want to say the Twins take on salary. But, there was a report this week that several teams are expecting the Twins to be among the most aggressive teams this offseason, and I think that kind of is surprising in some sense, but it makes sense in others. Again, they don't have a lot of money that's long-term on the books. It feels like for a team that really should be trying to compete for the World Series, that their salary isn't outrageous. They were in the bottom half of the league in 2020 still. It's really hard to say. I would say the free up salary one, there's just not that much salary to free up other than Sano, and we touched on how his value's at the bottom. That they're going to have to make room. They're going to have to make room in the corner outfield, in the first base, in the DH picture. So I would say the most likely one is Twins give up a top prospect for a star, and we see someone like a Kirilloff or a Larnach get traded for guys who can help them right now. Yeah, I'm with you, because here to me is the key point. The Twins sort of top 3, we talked about possibly trading Duran and Balazovic, who are their top pitching prospects, of course, but I don't think you can make a case for them as being elite prospects in baseball, right? They're not popping up at the top of those top 100 national lists. When you look at the 3 guys that are in that conversation, it's Lewis, it's Kirilloff, it's Larnach. And frankly, all 3 of those guys are replaceable to the Twins. They're not, you don't want to give them away, but these are not the kinds of players that are essential to their long-term plans. And they are trying to win right now, which I think puts them in a really good position to be able to float those players around and take on. I think, the number 1 category and the number 2 category or number 3 category will probably have some crossover. If you're giving up a top prospect for a star, you're probably taking on some salary. Maybe not in the same way as you're getting like a very good value because you're taking on $20 million from Lindor, but still. Nash, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I would like to see number 1, of course, but maybe in a different way than what we've been discussing. Like if number 3 was linked in, I think there are going, and Tom and I talked about this a little bit a week and a half or so ago, about how many free agents I think will be there on 1 or 2 year deals that are guys that would normally get 5 or 6 year deals. I'd like to see the Twins take advantage of that. I think it's a part of the market where a lot of teams are going to say, oh no, we're not, I don't want to even pay that to certain free agents. Guys not in the middle tier, but middle to upper tier, like the Marcus Semien tier, the Andrelton Simmons tier, even, those guys like that where they can get great value without giving up prospects and without giving up that long-term flexibility, because we know that's what they like to have. There's a reason the books look the way they do. They like to have the flexibility to make a move like sign Josh Donaldson or do other things. I think they're going to want to keep the flexibility, especially now. I think it would be a great opportunity to sign a heap of guys to 1 and 2 year deals, a bunch of relief pitchers or 3 or 4 of them even, and see if you can get a really good value in that spot on guys who would make a lot more without the pandemic.
That's really true. The valuation thing, the very few teams being willing to spend a lot of money for immediate returns applies on free agency just as well. So, that's a great point. You can take the first category here. If the Twins are willing to take on salary, why not go get some of this high class talent on the free agent market and not have to give up your prospects? Nash, I want to ask you, since you had the Story trade, Sean has an idea here that builds upon it. Garver, Gordon, Dobnak, Smeltzer, and a lottery arm for Story and Gray, because he says Colorado need OBP and they need a bounce back starting pitcher.
Sean, I like that a lot. John Gray also 1 more year. What were you going to say, Nick?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say I like that a lot for sure. I think I'm still, even after 2020, something just, and I'm not in the locker room, but something tells me that Mitch Garver is a really big piece of the team. I think he is, and he did struggle in 2020. I don't want to trade Mitch Garver if I'm the Twins. That would be something that I would shy away from, even with Ryan Jeffers coming. I think you can definitely live with those two in a role together. I think this would probably get done. I don't know how much trade value Nick Gordon has, or even Devin Smeltzer, but I think you can't undersell that it's only 1 year for Gray, 1 year for Story. They're going to be free agents. The Rockies are going to lose them most likely. So I don't think it's going to cost as much as maybe some people are projecting. This might be the year to get John Gray. I was thinking about it the other day, and Twins fans have said that for a couple off seasons. Now only 1 year left, and he's in his last year of ARB, and it's going to be, I don't know what he's going to make. I assume it's probably 6, 7, 8. I don't know exactly the number. But this might be the time where the Rockies finally say, okay, let's get some value back for John Gray. And if you package Story in that's a blockbuster move, Sean. I like it.
Yes, that was very, very creative. I love the commenters bringing the creativity here too. But I'm with you. John too said Garver trade is imminent. I don't agree. I'm with you, Nash. I think this is the wrong time to trade Mitch Garver because he's going to bounce back to some extent. And I love the idea of having him and Garver behind the plate there. Tom, what do you think about this idea? Marco Gonzalez of the Seattle Mariners, right? For Larnach and Belizovic. It's out of the division. Too much, too little. I think that is a high price to pay.
Marco Gonzalez actually, though, is like he doesn't have a lot of flight. He doesn't strike out a lot of guys. He's not really flashy, but he is, like, by the numbers, way better than you would imagine Marco Gonzalez being. So I do think Marco Gonzalez is an interesting trade target. But just for those guys, that's going to be no for me. One thing I wanted to add that we haven't mentioned yet, and I'm not sure, I haven't thought this early yet about the draft, but one of the keys to the Maeda trade was also that the Twins included a supplemental draft pick. I think that was a second-round pick. So this front office has done a lot of creative things with that nature as well, in terms of including some of those tradable picks that they have. So keep that in mind. I can't remember off the top of my head where their sandwich picks are, if they've even got to that point for next year. Who knows if we're having a draft next year. So, but that's something to keep in mind, that they can also get value out of that stuff. And they've shown the willingness to do that.
Yeah. Heath says, not sure what it would take, but the Red Sox are cutting salary. They could get, Twins could maybe get Chris Sale fairly cheap. Nash, is that something that interests you?
It would. Last year, I know I said I floated that in a Twins Daily article, and Seth just absolutely toasted me. I see Seth is working on the Sale front in the comments again. I would have done it last year, Heath. I wouldn't do it now. I think his Tommy John was probably inevitable, and I worry about his elbow moving forward, and that's a huge salary, as Seth has so graciously pointed out. Last year, I would have done it, though.
Yeah, Seth, for those not watching, maybe listening to the podcast, says for sale, if the Twins took his salary, the Red Sox would make the trade for the 140th ranked Twins prospect, or pretty much every player. You know, I think there's only one person in the world who knows who the 140th ranked Twins prospect is, and that is Seth Stowe.
That is not a joke. That I swear to you, he has a prospect list that goes that deep. I think I've seen it.
Cody says Sale is washed up. John says Sale is an injury issue. So, yeah. He also says, honestly, I wouldn't. Sale showed in Boston. He is tired and injured. Also, he'd cut up our jerseys. What if he cut up that beautiful Josh Donaldson baby blue that we got behind Nash there on the wall? That would
it's okay that he cut up the White Sox jersey, though. I was good with that.
Tragic.
I was good with that.
All right. This has been a great conversation. I appreciate everyone for bringing all the creativity and everything here in the comments. Oh, Tom makes a point. Tom makes a point. A small product plug. If you like, yep. He's got his copy. I got mine too. If you like video games or the history of video games, or you know anyone in your life who maybe does, I released a book last week, Versus 25 head-to-head battles that shaped the evolution of video games. That is available at versusbook.com, VERSUS book.com, in paperback and ebook. A great Christmas gift if you're just struggling. You're shopping around like the Twins on the trade market, and you're just coming up empty. Go get yourself a copy of Versus and send it to someone.
I got to tell you, and you can pass this along to Jay. This right here, like, I've been flipping through. This page took me back to when I was like 11, 12 years old in my brother's bedroom watching him play Resident Evil for the first time. And like that right there alone was just worth the price of the book. Just I was there. It took me back, man.
An absolutely classic moment in video game history. Yes, I will pass it along. Jay filled that thing, full color illustrations. 250 pages. I think people will enjoy it. You know what? Cody threw out a topic that I would love to touch on real quick just because it's very timely. Thoughts on St. Paul as the Twins AAA affiliate. Now, to just get anyone looped in who maybe is not aware of the news, the Twins have severed their relationship with the Rochester Red Wings as their AAA affiliate. And there's some buzz. Lavelle Neal of the Star Tribune putting some buzz out there that it could be the Saints, who, of course, were their affiliate or their alternate site here in 2020, stepping in as their AAA affiliate. I mean, this idea I love. I mean, I geek out at the idea of being able to say, oh, Twins are out of town? Maybe I'll just head on over to the Saints' beautiful ballpark. We've had Twins events there. It's a great place to catch a game and actually see some Twins prospects. It would be incredible, not to mention the logistical simplicity of calling a guy over from 20 minutes away to play a game. Tom, what are your thoughts on this idea?
I wrote about it at Twins Daily, so if people want to kind of see my perspective that I tried to give from the Saints' perspective, which I don't think it's as attractive as maybe most people would imagine, but I'm in the same boat with you as from a fan's perspective. It would be amazing. One thing I will say, though, is keep in mind that if there is a MLB work stoppage in 2020, that means we also won't have an independent team league to watch across the river as an alternative if MLB is shutting it down for a labor dispute. Just something to keep in mind there. But yeah, I mean, the Saints, they already attract an average attendance over the seating capacity at CHS Field. In pre-COVID times. They'd have to pay to be an affiliate. They, would have to deal with MLB. There are some obstacles, I think, that are there that people might not consider, but it would be amazing for the Twins. It would be amazing for Twins fans, no doubt about it.
I agree. Nash, what are your feelings about that?
Love it. I'm with you guys. You could eliminate that 6 a.m. Rochester flight. I think it's at 6 when those guys get moved over. I'm sure they'd be happy about that. Yeah, slam dunk for me. I would love that on all fronts. Just go see the top prospects would be super cool.
All righty. Nash, you're the man. Thank you so much for joining us. Hey, guys, make sure you check out twinsdaily.com. I know Nash has an article going up sometime tomorrow, maybe, that kind of
another third trade.
Yep.
Third trade as well. So,
bonus.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
Thanks, Tom.
Come to twinsdaily.com for a bonus, and we're not talking about John bonus, so don't worry about that. It is a bonus trade. Ron, thank you. Swendini, thank you. Nate, thank you. Thank you to everyone who checked in, made comments, watched the show tonight. Great audience, great Great back and forth. Nash, thank you. Tom, thank you. Everyone. Offseason Live, we'll have another episode coming up maybe next week with some offseason blueprints. So we'll walk through some entire models that we think the Twins could follow, some specific plans for building a team for 2021. So make sure to check in for that. And keep coming by twinsdaily.com for work from the likes of Tom and Nash. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Tom, before we go, who's your number one trade, your most coveted trade target on the market this offseason?
Max the cat. Patrick Fonder's cat, Max.
Max the cat says
Max the cat.
People are talking about him. He's been in the news and the stream. All Max the cat, number one.
A lot of people are talking about Max the cat. Nash, who's your
I'm gonna go because I've just gone down the road and we talked about Lindor and Story, but I believe that it would be creative for the Twins to get a starting shortstop, move Polanco utility role. So I'll say Trevor Story. I'll go with my first trade tonight.
I love it. There's a very unique kind of opportunity to maybe acquire some players like that. So thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone. Tune into twinsdaily.com. We will definitely catch you next time. Take care.